Not everyone finds comfort in company. Not everyone feels joy when the doorbell rings or someone drops by unannounced. And that doesn't make you broken. It doesn't mean you're cold, rude, or antisocial. It means your soul is tuned into something deeper, something quieter, something sacred. Carl Jung understood this. He taught that the path to true self-understanding doesn't begin in crowds or conversation, but in stillness. When you don't like having visitors, it's not rejection of people. It's a natural reflection of your need for inner alignment. There is a part of your soul that knows noise isn't always connection. Sometimes it's a distraction. The busyness of having others around, the pressure to entertain, to smile, to engage, it can pull you away from the truth of what you're feeling, what you're healing, and what you're becoming. That discomfort you feel around visitors, it's not about them, it's about you and your relationship with silence, energy, and presence. It's about your soul's quiet plea for space to breathe. In a world that constantly demands we be available, open, and accessible, choosing solitude becomes an act of self-respect. Jung believed that only in solitude can the true self emerge. The self that isn't performing. The self that isn't adjusting to fit into someone else's comfort. The self that simply is. When you create space for yourself, by turning down invitations, by not answering the door, by simply saying, I'm not available, you are listening to that part of you that wants to come home. We don't talk enough about how exhausting it can be to host energy that doesn't match our own. When someone enters your home, they bring more than their body. They bring their mood, their stories, their expectations. And if you're a sensitive soul, you absorb that energy even when you try not to. That's why you feel drained after they leave. That's why you need silence to recover. Your soul isn't antisocial. It's aware. It's discerning. It's wise. There's nothing wrong with enjoying your own company more than the presence of others. In fact, it's a sign of deep emotional maturity. It means you are not afraid to sit with yourself, to hear your own thoughts, to feel your own feelings. Many people run from that. They seek constant companionship, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of what they'll hear in the silence. But not you. You've chosen another path, a path of reflection, a path of inward peace. Carl Jung referred to this as individuation, the process by which a person becomes their most authentic self. And individuation requires solitude. It requires time away from the expectations of others so you can hear your soul speak. When you turn down visitors, you're not being rude. You're creating space for that inner conversation. You're saying, right now, I need to sit with me. And that is a sacred choice. You don't need to explain your need for space to people who don't understand it. You don't need to feel guilty for not inviting everyone into your world. Some people were never meant to enter your inner sanctuary. Some energies were never meant to cross your threshold. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it's spiritual. So the next time you feel guilty for not being social enough, remember this: solitude isn't loneliness, it's alignment. It's where you meet your truest self and tend to your soul's quiet call. And in that space, without distraction, without performance, you grow, you heal, and you rise. Let the healing begin. Some people walk into a room and feel nothing. You walk into a room and feel everything. That's the difference. That's the reason you don't like having visitors. It's not that you dislike people, it's that you sense them. Their energy, their state of mind, their hidden emotions, their unspoken intentions. Carl Jung understood this on a soul level. He believed that deeply intuitive individuals live in constant relationship with the unseen, the unspoken, and the energetic undercurrents of life. When you say, I don't like having visitors, what you're really saying is, I can't afford to keep letting energies into my space that don't match my peace. You feel it when someone's smile is masking their anxiety. You feel the weight of unspoken tension. You sense discomfort even when no one says a word. This isn't something you chose, it's something your spirit was gifted with. But every gift has its cost. And for you, the cost is that you can't casually entertain company like others do. You can't just hang out and be unaffected. Because when someone sits on your couch, they don't just sit, they pour energy into your space. And you absorb it, whether you want to or not. That's not you being sensitive in a weak way. That's you being energetically intelligent. And Jung would have called it a high level of psychic awareness. He knew that those who could sense the energy of others were not ordinary. They were healers, seers, carriers of deep wisdom. But with that wisdom comes responsibility. You have to protect your space like it's sacred, because it is. You don't reject people out of rudeness or judgment. You simply know that not everyone is meant to enter your field. Not everyone is safe for your spirit. Some people leave residue long after they've left the room. You find yourself thinking their thoughts, feeling their mood, replaying their stories. And that's not accidental. That's energetic transference. It's real. And if you don't guard your space, you end up carrying emotional weight that was never yours to hold. This is why you've learned to listen to your body when someone's around, why you feel a subtle heaviness when certain people step into your home, why your energy dips even if nothing bad happened. You're not imagining it. You're picking up signals others ignore. And while the world may label that as being too sensitive or antisocial, what it really is sacred discernment. Carl Jung believed that the soul communicates through symbols, feelings, and instincts, not always words. And your discomfort around certain people is your soul saying, this isn't aligned. It's your intuitive system warning you before your logical mind can even process why. Trust that. Trust the knowing without explanation. You weren't meant to keep your doors open to everyone. You were meant to use discernment like a compass to feel your way through connections, not just think your way through them. People may not understand why you don't open your home to everyone, why you're selective about your space, why you choose solitude over socializing, but they don't have to understand. You do. You know that every visit isn't harmless. Every interaction isn't light. Some people take from your peace even when they don't mean to, and your peace is too valuable to be traded for politeness. You are someone who senses deeply, feels deeply, lives deeply. And that's not a weakness, it's a spiritual strength. It means you walk in truth. It means you trust what your body, your energy, your intuition already knows. It means you protect your temple, not just for your sake, but because the healing you're called to carry requires a clean, sacred space to grow in. Let the healing begin. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being around too little depth. When you find yourself preferring silence over small talk or choosing your own company over being surrounded by people, it's not because you're broken. It's because your soul is craving something more, something meaningful, something real. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He believed that the soul doesn't thrive on distraction, it thrives on depth. And when you say, I don't like having visitors, what you're really saying is, my spirit is not nourished by shallow energy. You see, there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Many people surround themselves with constant chatter and activity, not because they enjoy it, but because they fear what might come up in the silence. But not you. You've learned to sit with yourself, to listen to your own heart, to reflect, to question, to feel deeply. And once you've tasted the richness of that inner world, surface level interactions lose their appeal. When you've been through deep pain, deep transformation, deep healing, your soul becomes sensitive to what's shallow. Conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. Relationships that were once fun now feel draining. You begin to notice how much energy it takes to pretend, to perform, to please. And you get tired, not just physically tired, but soul tired, because your spirit is calling for something more nourishing than noise. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, repress, or ignore, and he believed that the only way to truly grow is to face those parts with honesty and compassion. That kind of work doesn't happen in crowds. It doesn't happen at dinner parties or weekend visits. It happens in the quiet, in the stillness, in the sacred solitude where you can hear the voice of your own soul. So when you choose not to welcome visitors into your space, you're not avoiding people. You're honoring your process. There's nothing wrong with wanting meaningful connection. But when your days are filled with people who only engage on the surface, it leaves a deep emptiness. You weren't made for constant chatter and passive entertainment. You were made for truth, for transformation, for sacred conversation, the kind that leaves you better, not depleted. And that kind of connection is rare. That's why you don't open your door to just anyone, because your spirit is done tolerating what doesn't feed it. People may misinterpret your boundaries as coldness, but boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They protect your peace, your energy, your time. You're not shutting people out of your life. You're filtering out what's meaningless so you can make space for what's real. Jung believed that every soul carries a deeper truth, a sacred calling. But to access that truth, we must detach from the superficial world long enough to hear the whisper of who we really are. You've likely noticed that the more you grow spiritually and emotionally, the fewer people you want around. That's not loneliness. That's refinement. That's clarity. That's the voice of your soul saying, I am not available for anything less than what aligns with my highest self. And honoring that voice is not selfish, it's sacred. So don't feel guilt when you say no to invitations. Don't feel shame when you prefer your own company. You're not running from life. You're returning to your essence. You're no longer interested in playing roles or entertaining empty conversations. You want depth. You want presence. You want to sit in silence and feel the truth of your own being. Because when you live from that place, that deep, sacred place, everything changes. You no longer chase people. You no longer beg for understanding. You simply live in alignment and let those who speak the language of depth find their way to your door. Let the healing begin. There comes a time in your life when you stop living for applause and start living for peace. You begin to realize that not every room needs your presence, not every moment needs your performance, and not every person deserves access to your energy. That's not arrogance, that's awakening. Carl Jung understood this beautifully. He believed that healing and wholeness come when we stop looking outward for validation and begin turning inward for truth. So when you say, I don't like having visitors, you're not rejecting people. You're simply choosing reflection over performance. You're stepping away from the noise so you can hear the truth within. You see, society teaches us that being available means being good, that saying yes makes you kind, that always opening your door makes you generous. But your soul knows better. Your soul knows that availability without boundaries leads to burnout, that always showing up for others can mean disappearing from yourself. So you've learned, often through pain, that peace comes when you stop performing and start protecting your inner space. There's a pressure that comes with being around people, a silent expectation to smile, to talk, to serve, to entertain. And for someone like you, someone deeply intuitive and spiritually sensitive, that kind of constant outward focus becomes draining. It's not that you don't love people, you just can't keep betraying your spirit to make others comfortable. Carl Jung spoke of this when he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and becoming who you truly are requires solitude. It requires time alone, not because you're escaping the world, but because you're building a deeper relationship with your soul. When you're always performing, always pleasing, always responding to others, you lose touch with your own rhythm, your own needs, your own wisdom. You start to confuse your worth with how much you give. But you were never meant to be someone's entertainment. You were meant to be someone's example, an example of what it looks like to honor yourself first. That's not selfish. That's sacred. You begin to understand that inner work, the real deep healing work, requires quiet. It requires spaciousness. You can't do soul surgery while serving coffee and making small talk. You can't access your truest self while constantly managing someone else's comfort. So you turn inward. You step back. You say, not right now. And in that stillness, something profound happens. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the path to becoming your most authentic self. And the truth is, that journey can't be walked with a crowd. It demands privacy. It demands time away from the gaze of others so you can hear your own voice clearly. And when you choose to limit your interactions, when you protect your space, when you turn inward, you're not avoiding life. You're preparing to live it from a place of truth. People may not understand your need for solitude. They may call you distant, cold, or aloof, but don't explain, don't defend. Your healing doesn't require their understanding. It only requires your commitment. You are no longer living for approval. You are no longer editing yourself to be accepted. You are choosing you, and that is the highest form of love. When you decline a visit, when you don't open the door, when you choose silence over small talk, you're not withdrawing, you're transforming. You're doing the sacred work of becoming whole. And yes, it can feel lonely. Yes, it can be misunderstood. But on the other side of that solitude is a peace no crowd can offer, and a self no approval can replace. Let the healing begin. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from saying no, from deciding that not everyone gets to cross the threshold of your space, from standing firm in the truth that your energy, your peace, your home are not open to just anyone. And that kind of power doesn't come from ego. It comes from healing, from experience, from wisdom earned through pain. Carl Jung believed that self-respect is not something we proclaim, it's something we live. And you live it by setting strong, soul-rooted boundaries. When you say you don't like having visitors, you're not being rude, you're being responsible with your energy. You're choosing to protect the peace you fought hard to cultivate. You've learned that every visit is not innocent, that every person who enters your space brings with them an energetic imprint, their thoughts, their emotions, their chaos, their wounds, and because you're someone who feels deeply, you don't just see what's happening, you absorb it. That's why you're selective. That's why your home isn't an open door policy anymore. You've likely experienced what it feels like to have someone come into your space and leave it heavy. They didn't break anything. They didn't yell. They didn't argue. But somehow you were exhausted when they left. That's not your imagination. That's the silent cost of unfiltered access. And once you become aware of that cost, you stop paying it just to be polite. Carl Jung taught that everything we invite into our lives, people, patterns, choices, shapes our inner world. When you allow someone into your home, you're allowing them into your sacred energy field. That's not a small thing. That's why you no longer entertain everyone. You've become the gatekeeper of your peace. You've stopped confusing being kind with being accessible. You've realized that your home is not just a physical place, it's a spiritual sanctuary. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about drawing a line between what nurtures your soul and what drains it. Some people walk in and uplift the room. Others walk in and leave a residue of heaviness. Your intuition knows the difference. That's why you listen to the tug in your gut when someone asks to visit. That hesitation, that resistance, that's not anxiety, that's awareness. Your body feels what your mind hasn't processed yet. People may not understand why you keep your circle small, why you don't let everyone come over, why your presence is limited and your availability rare, but they don't need to understand. You didn't come here to explain your boundaries. You came here to protect your peace. And the more you honor your boundaries, the more powerful you become. Not in a loud way, in a grounded, calm, unwavering way. The kind of power that doesn't beg for permission. The kind of peace that doesn't require validation. Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that's exactly what you're doing. By saying no, by closing the door, by honoring your space, you're accepting yourself. You're choosing yourself. You're trusting that your feelings are not wrong. Your intuition is not overreacting. Your discernment is not negativity. It's wisdom. And wisdom isn't always loud. Sometimes it just says, not today, not this person, not this energy. There is a sacredness in knowing that your space is your sanctuary, that not everyone deserves access, that your peace is precious and your boundaries are the walls that protect it. You no longer apologize for protecting what matters. You no longer feel guilty for saying no, because your healing depends on your discernment. And your future depends on the boundaries you're brave enough to set today. Let the healing begin. There's a deep loneliness that comes with waking up. Not because you're unloved or unwanted, but because the higher you rise in your soul's journey, the fewer people are walking beside you. And yet, this solitude isn't empty. It's sacred. When Carl Jung spoke of individuation, he wasn't just talking about becoming yourself, he was speaking of the shedding, the separation, the courageous release of all that is not in alignment with your true nature. So when you say, I don't like having visitors, it's not about dislike. It's about depth. It's about the profound truth that your soul is walking a path many cannot and will not understand. There comes a point where surface level conversations just don't satisfy you anymore. You find it difficult to laugh at what no longer feels funny. You're not interested in gossip, in chaos, in mindless interaction. You crave stillness. You crave meaning. You crave something more. And that craving, that ache for depth, is not a flaw. It's a sign that your spirit is growing, that your soul is unfolding. Jung knew that transformation doesn't happen in the crowd. It happens in the quiet hours. It happens in the solitude that most people are terrified of, because in solitude there are no distractions, just you, your truth, and the parts of yourself you can no longer run from. And when you begin doing that kind of inner work, you realize how precious your energy really is, how sacred your presence is, how important it is to guard your peace like it's gold, because it is. You've likely noticed that the more you heal, the less you tolerate. The more you grow, the less you explain. You stop justifying your distance. You stop apologizing for not opening your door, because you're not trying to be understood anymore. You're trying to be aligned. And alignment often looks like solitude. It looks like silence. It looks like disappearing from what no longer feels authentic and reappearing in spaces that feel like home. There is something holy about a soul that has chosen the path of depth over popularity, that has chosen to sit with their shadows instead of hiding them, that has chosen to walk alone rather than walk in pretense. You are not cold, you are not disconnected. You are deeply connected, just not to the noise of the world. You're connected to the rhythm of your own spirit, and that rhythm doesn't dance for everyone. Your journey isn't supposed to make sense to people who aren't called to it. Your solitude is not a sign of failure. It's a mark of spiritual maturity. You are not lonely because something is wrong with you. You are alone because something is awakening in you. And that awakening needs space. It needs time. It needs quiet. It needs boundaries. Most of all, it needs your trust that even though you're walking a path few understand, you are walking it exactly as you should. Jung believed that the soul's purpose is to become whole. And becoming whole isn't about being surrounded, it's about being seen. And the first person who must see you fully is you. So if solitude is what it takes to meet yourself, embrace it. If silence is what it takes to hear your truth, welcome it. If fewer people in your life means more clarity in your spirit, honor that. You don't need to be more social to be more healed. You don't need more visitors to feel more alive. Sometimes healing looks like silence. Sometimes love looks like saying no. Sometimes wholeness looks like walking alone with your head high, your heart full, and your spirit at peace.